Hey everyone, Jim T. Graham. I was going to do it different, Jason. I was going to say, I'm not Jason Cole, and then you would say, and I'm not Jim T. Graham.
Well, we should have told me that before we got live.
My mind is so rapid that it came to me right as I hit the go button. Sorry about that. Anyway, you're on the RC Group's YouTube Hangout. So, first, let me get my cup out of the way.
Yeah.
Let me say that we attempted to do a Hangout, and we have been having not any kind of interference except from Google and YouTube themselves. Every time we tried to do a live hangout, we were getting white screens. Jason got one. Jason was at Triple Tree last week. So we were trying to do a live feed out of there, but it had nothing to do with that because I was getting a white screen too. So I am saying I'm sorry that we haven't been live with you guys in a long time. But we had technical difficulties that we couldn't control.
Yeah, and it's weird. I actually had awesome internet at Triple Tree. I went up to the Welcome Center, had a table set up, a nice bench, beautiful grounds behind me in the backdrop, and I had like 25 megabits per second internet. It was like better than the hotels.
Yeah, the wind was blowing the trees. It looked very lovely. I bet it was hot out there. So you're wondering, hey, why is this live? What are we doing? Don't you guys start at 2? It's not 2. And so here's what we're going to do.
It's 2:00 somewhere.
Yeah. First, we were going to do this just to make sure that our live stream would work. But Jason went to the Mid-South Soaring Championships last week, and I believe he did pretty well. And I said, hey, man, why don't we split into 2 podcasts so we don't mix them up? So this podcast, YouTube Hangout, will be about the Mid-South Soaring Championship of 2019. And then at 2:00, we're going to end this one and start another one. And that will be our Joe Nall in review. And Jason, it feels like that was about 10 years ago, that event. Lots happened.
The next one's around the corner, right?
Yeah. We're
ready now.
with Joe Nall. But what we'll do after this is we'll do the Joe Nall interview, and we'll jump over to our feature stories, which will jog our memory and make us think of all the cool things that we did while we're on the ground at Joe Nall 2009.
That's right. Sounds good.
So, Jason, you could start talking. I do have your thread pulled up here with photos and stuff if you want to go look at that at some point.
Yeah, feel free to throw them up there. I'll just talk. I'll kind of talk to you about it.
Okay.
And kind of give you an overview and tell you why it's fun and coul and awesome and all those things.
You know what? I'm going to interview you real quick with one question. Tell us about your recent being included in the ranks of American team players going to foreign grounds to try and dominate.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So that we haven't been on a podcast since that happened. Yeah. So last fall I went out for the team selects, and I was, going to be on the USA team for the F3K team that goes to the World Championships. It's this July. It's about a month and a half away.
What is F3K? Because
F3K is the hand launch. It's the FAI designation for hand launch competition. It's the discus launch gliders, DLGs. You might know of. So it's a FAI competition class. There's a World Championships for it. Runs every 2 years, and it's this year. It's in July. So last fall we had a contest to determine the team. The top 3 guys from the team was be on the USA and go represent the United States and compete for individual and team medals. And I was in first place for 2.5 out of the 3-day contest. I was like, I'm going to make it. This is crazy. And I blew it on basically 2 flights in the fly-offs at the end of it. And I put myself into 6th place with just 2 flights. It's literally that close. Like, you have to be perfect just about every flight. So I was like, okay, I tried. I did really good. I was really proud of myself. I knew I was at that level and caliber to be able to do it, and was really proud of how I performed. And then turns out that one of the guys on the team, it was Nathan Bartley, Rito, and Toby. And Rito injured his shoulder. So he is not able to throw. He can't launch, really can't compete at a level you need to be at. So he bowed out. And then that put the 4th place guy, who was the first alternate, up for grabs. And that was Gavin Trussell. And Gavin has kids going away into college, and he just can't do it. He needs to really focus and spend time with his family. So he can't do it. And then the 5th place guy, James, I don't think could get off for work or something. But he wasn't able to go, and I was the next guy on the list. I got a call on a Sunday morning. They said, "How do you feel about going to Hungary?" And I said, "Holy crap, are you kidding me? That sounds amazing." So I'm officially the third team member on the USA F3K team going to Hungary, July 9th through the 22nd. We're going to compete for a full week, 5 days of competition. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm getting airplanes ready. I've got wood behind me here and a sport tube. One of the guys at the Mid-South that we're going to talk about in a little bit ended up having a sport tube that he let me borrow. And I've got to build a nice plywood box to hold all my models. And there's a lot that goes into this. I'm super excited and really honored and super pumped to be able to go and represent the United States, but then also write about it and use my kind of the RC Group's platform to talk about soaring and to report back what it's like to be at a world championship level event and just share my experience as a first timer going in. And I'm sure it's going to be a lot to learn and crazy and a lot of fun, and I'm just excited to be able to bring that home and share that with anybody that cares to listen.
Jason, when I think of Hungary, nothing comes to mind. Any
Well,
idea?
okay, so somebody asked me, he's like, "Have you been to Europe?" I was like, "Yeah, I've been to Croatia," and they were like, "Okay, picture the best parts of Croatia," and I was like, "Okay," and there's like, "That's Hungary." And I'm like, "Wow, okay." It's like that's pretty epic then.
So something I didn't know, Jason was in Croatia, and I have one of my best friends is from Croatia, but I was watching all the pieces from the Game of Thrones where they shot everything, and like tons of the castles and stuff are in Croatia.
Yeah, Dubrovnik, yeah, all over the place out there. It's beautiful country. Hungary's pretty close to Croatia. It's more inland, more I guess east of Croatia. It's not on the coast. I don't know. We're flying into Budapest, and then we got to drive like an hour and a half to some city that I can't pronounce. It's a bunch of letters and consonants, and I don't know how to say it, but that's where it's going to be. So it's probably going to be hot. I don't know. We're going to be prepared. Yeah, I'm super honored. You know, it's a big deal to be one of the three guys going, for the United States and the world. It's pretty awesome.
Well, big congrats on that. Jason's always been a talent in the RC hobby, and this is just another piece of that. So we said it at the beginning of the show, but I'm going to say it again for the live viewers. At 2, we're going to stop this podcast when we finish our topic here, and then at 2 we're going to start the original, the OG podcast, and we're going to talk about our Joe Nall experience 2019. But the crazy part is that Jason left Joe Nall with me and then jumped back in his car, I guess like 3 or 4 days later, and headed back up there, right?
Yeah. I pulled into Triple Tree, and it's like picture, like Joe Nall as if aliens came and just totally beamed everybody up and took all of their equipment. It was just completely wiped. They actually, I'm amazed how many people were there, and then how amazing the facility still looked. Like it wasn't trashed, the grass wasn't dead, it was just pristine, gorgeous, beautiful area, but nobody there. Like, it was just ghost town. So I pull in, and there's a few campers on the main line. This will tell you how awesome it was. I actually set my hammock up against 2 of the main posts of the main gazebo on the main flight line. So I slept in the main gazebo.
How'd that work out for you? We talked about it. Did it? No one was around at night. You're by yourself?
There were some people hanging out, and I think the Saturday night we were hanging out till like 1 o'clock in the morning or something, and then everybody crashed. But oh my gosh, there's a hilarious story. It's just things you don't think about, right? So I'm camping in the gazebo, and there's people all down the line, in amongst the tree line that's there on the main line, right? So I don't know, 4:30 in the morning or so, 4:45, I hear some crazy sounds that I've never heard before, like, and sprinklers turned on. Luckily, I wasn't in it, but it turned on literally in the middle of somebody's tent. Wow. It just destroyed models and parts and gear and equipment, and just started spraying. So they like stomped on it and tried to do it, and they're screaming, trying to get somebody to turn the water off. Nobody knew how to do that. It stayed on for a while, and then started doing the whole field. I didn't even know they had sprinklers. I guess it makes sense to water that lawn, but It's something you just never see or think about. And man, I feel bad for that guy. That was crazy. But they got it turned off. It didn't happen the rest of the weekend. But man, that was a way to wake up right there.
Were there Triple Tree people there? I know like Ginger and all those people were not there, but
no,
were there
most
people
everybody
on the
was gone.
ground?
There was basically 2 volunteers that were there. One guy came in from the West Coast, and he's basically living there now and looking for a job. He moved to this side of the country, and this was cool. I believe his name was Tim, but he was one of the original guys at Ceph who was doing those crazy flying wings when they first came out from Chris Click.
Yeah,
right?
Tim from California.
Yeah.
He must have stayed because he was at Nall. I saw him.
Yeah, that was him. So he was still there. He was one of the volunteers hanging out and doing things for
he
Pat.
Said maybe that's confidential. Anyway, okay. Yes, he was there.
Yeah, so it was cool to meet him, and I guess I didn't see him at Joe Nall, but I was like, man, I know you from Ceph. You guys were doing those crazy screamers and all that stuff, so that was pretty neat. But yeah, basically 2 guys doing things. They're out there just back to work, mowing and taking care of projects and handling the grounds.
Yeah, I believe it was Chris Kantz. Talking to the live chat.
There you go.
So we have some pictures, right?
Yeah, you got some pictures. You can go and pull those up. I'll tell you what happened. So the Mid-South Soaring Championships is I don't remember how many years it's been going on, a very long time. I think more than 20. And it's been hosted at various facilities. I think it used to be at Tullahoma, maybe Atlanta, kind of all over the place a little bit. Now it kind of rides out at Triple Tree. And it's a soaring competition. It's a little bit different than the hand launch stuff that I'm on the team for. This is big, 3 and 4 meter gliders. So there's me packed up with all my stuff heading down. And it's kind of a 3-day contest. And each day is an individual contest. So it's like 3 separate contests crammed into 3 days. So Friday is kind of unique. They did an F5J along with an ALES, altitude limited electric soaring. So F5J is kind of the newer thing. It's a little bit more complicated. I'd never done one before. ALES is more like a thermal duration, typical standard contest.
I'm going to stop you there for 1 second. So this is Jason on the main line last week, and that was us on the main line the week before.
Yeah, big difference.
Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So I was there on Friday, I wanted to make sure and get in an F5J. That's what my new Neutrino, that sailplane I did a review on RC Groups, it's kind of purpose built for F5J competitions. And I was, just excited to try it. It seems like a lot of fun. It's like a real big soaring thermaling contest instead of like a landing contest. I'll talk more about that in a minute. I literally came in, I knew like the basic idea of how the contest would operate, but I didn't know how strategy would play in or, what I would want to do or how I would want to fly. So it's really interesting. You get out on the line and you have landing tapes and everybody's kind of standing right near their landing tapes.
That's the neutrino right there.
Yeah. And it'll give you a countdown. So it's kind of an automated timing system. So you get like 1 minute or 3 minutes before you launch, and then it'll count you down until the buzzer. As soon as the buzzer hits, you can power on your motor and throw it. Now, the trick with F5J is you get a starting altitude, and it's based on the highest altitude you achieved from the time you turned on your motor until 10 seconds after the motor stops. Now, so it's going to take the highest point during that time. And now you have 30 seconds you can run your motor. And you can run it full throttle. You can go straight up. You can stay really low, go around. And you can go hunting. You can go far away. You can go any direction. You don't have to go in a specific direction. So you basically, before you launch, you're kind of looking around. You're reading the air. You're trying to see where a possible thermal might be, because you kind of want to have your starting altitude to be as low as possible and still be able to make a full 10-minute flight. And that's kind of the crux of it, and where it's really challenging. I got to tell you, it was literally the most heart-pumping soaring competition I've ever done. Even with F3K, which is much more physical, and you're spinning around and launching and throwing discus launch gliders. This was much more heart pumping because you're trying to outdo the other guys. You're trying to launch low and still fly for 10 minutes, which is a very long time. And it was just awesome, man. So you'd look around, you'd try to follow the wind and look at the trees and see if you see any birds or insects or bugs or little fluffy things floating up in thermals, just trying to get an idea of where a good low-level thermal is. So you'd launch, you'd go try to hunt that up. You'd go as high as you feel like you could and still make your time, and then you'd thermal around. And what it ended up being was a bunch of really low-level thermaling and saves, like low-level saves. Like, oh, if I don't catch something right now, I'm going to be landing in 30 seconds, 2 minutes into the flight. And so you get back to the trees and you find something, and then you work it and you thermal and you turn in it, and then you climb out, and then all of a sudden you're 10 minutes up there. And you powered 30. I mean, and most people would run the motor for 30 seconds, but not even the climb. Like several of my flights, I only went to like 50, 60 meters, something like that. Sometimes I'd go to 100 meters. If I did 30-second climb straight up, I could get to hundreds of meters in 30 seconds, and you'd be way the heck up there. But you want to stay low, like I said. So I would launch fairly low, kind of middle of the pack sometimes, and just thermal. And that's where it's so fun to just go find those and find that lift instead of launching really high to start with and then kind of coasting. Because once you're really high, it's really easy to get into more thermals, or the thermals are broader and more widespread, and it's easy to stay up for 10 minutes once you've already launched that high. So that's where it was really fun and intense and like adrenaline pumping, is because you're tree level height, and then you got to work it, and you still got to fly for 8 more minutes, and so you got to really like be on your game. So it was so much fun. So after a few rounds, I really didn't know how I was doing, and I was like, whoa, I'm in first place somehow. How is this happening? But I guess I should tell you about the end of a round. So you fly for 10 minutes, and there's a landing tape. And so each pilot has their own like landing tape. And for every meter, it goes down in 5 points. So you can get 50 bonus points if you land within the pin to a meter out in a circle. And then it goes to 45 and 40 and 35 and 30, all the way down to nothing. So you're coming in and you want to land as close to the 10-minute buzzer as possible, but you cannot go over. If you land at 10:01 and you made a 50-point landing, those 50 points are wiped out. It doesn't count. You still get your time for your flight, but you don't get your bonus landing points. So you got to land at like 9:59 or right at 10 o'clock if you're really good. And most people tend to land between like 9:55 and 9:58 just to play it a little bit conservative and safe and make sure you don't go over. So that's how you get your points. You have the longest flight, the most amount of time. You score 9:59 or 10. You get your bonus landing points. And then that starting altitude, where that comes into play, is that gives you negative points. So for every meter of altitude of your starting altitude, you take off a half a point. And so that comes off of your score. So a guy who went 9:59 and launched at 100 meters and got a 50 bonus points, and then a guy who'd made a 9:59 and launched at 20 meters is going to end up with a higher score for that round because he launched lower and got less of a points deduction. So it's really it's a game. It's a challenge. It's a strategy. You're flying against the other guys in your round, trying to get the most points. And somehow I was in first place, about halfway through the contest, and I'm like, wow, this is cool. And then strategy starts coming into play. And so I was thinking about it, and I was like, well, okay, I'm in first place. If I don't make my time, that's going to knock me out. If I make my time and have a high launch, then maybe that's not so bad. So the second to the last round, I launched fairly high. I think I went to like 166 meters, really high. I was like, I'm going to guarantee I'm going to make my time. And I got it and got good points, and I got a good round out of that. And so the final flight, we had a drop round essentially. So I did really well through all of my flights, and you get one drop round when you get to 6 rounds. So you basically take your lowest score and wipe it out. It doesn't count. So the last round, I'm like, I can basically get a 0 on this flight, and I still win the contest. So I didn't launch. I still went high, but I didn't go as high because the air was kind of dead. So it's basically go high and then float at the end of the day. And I ended up winning that contest, my very first F5J, and I was super pumped. The neutrino was amazing. It's just purpose built for F5J, and it does it extremely well. I literally couldn't be happier with that airplane. Super cool to come in first place against really good guys. So that's Mike Gardner from Florida came in second place. And then Frank, there's really good top pilot. He came in third. Really strong competition. We had Brady Baggs. We had some like serious competitors in this group of people. So I was, pretty proud that I was able to come out on top for this one.
Now, did they let you keep the chair?
Yeah, we were looking like we need a podium, and they were like, "What can we do?" And they're like, "Here's a chair." And we were like, "Okay."
Brian Chambers said it was a rookie luck.
That's right. Yeah, but I am a glider pilot. So true, so true. So that was Friday's contest, right? And then the L's guys, it's a little bit different. They had a 30-second motor run, and they could get to 150 meters, and then the motor would automatically cut off, and then they'd have to fly for 10 minutes, and then also do a spot landing. And it's just similar, but you just don't have the strategy of launching low. Tallest he's been in a long time. Thanks, Steve. That's why I ride my Segway, because I can be as tall as Jim T at Joe Nall. But okay, so that was Friday. So Saturday and Sunday is what we called a mixed launch thermal duration contest. It's very similar to AILS, but you have winch launches. So you got planes with no motors in them, and they use these winches, and they have a pedal, and you can control the winch, and you kind of roll it up this line as the winch winds the line in, and then you dive down and do a zoom, and the plane just goes and just rockets off the line and gets really high.
Are we looking at that? Or are we looking at something?
Yeah, that's he's getting ready to do a winch launch right there. So you can see he's got his foot on the pedal, and then there he is throwing it. You can kind of see the line there. Yeah. So it pulls him up pretty good, and then so everybody.
And then a party ensues.
Holy crap! Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. So we would have mixed launch. So you'd have guys doing winch launches, and then you'd have guys doing electric launches, and the electric guys would go to 150 meters, and they'd have to go straight out, just like a winch launch plane would be launching. So you kind of all end up around a similar altitude in a similar area at the start of the launch, or at the end of your launch, when you're up there. And then you have to fly for 10 minutes and do a spot landing. Now, the spot landing in thermal duration is a lot harder than F5J. So F5J puts more of an emphasis on thermaling and reading air and flying, where thermal duration, you still have that, but there's a huge emphasis on landing. And you only get it's a point per inch. So wherever the tape is staked into the ground, that first inch is 100 points, and it goes 99, 98, 97, all the way down to 0. So every inch, it's really small. And the winch launch planes have an advantage here, in my opinion. I think my highest landing all weekend was on that tape was like an 80 something, like a high 80, like an 86 maybe. And it's because with an electric motor, I've got a motor in the front with a nose cone, and it's more fragile, right? So I come in and I try to land sort of flat and try to slide it a little bit. You can sort of hit it on an angle, but what a lot of these guys do is on the winch launch planes, they're really strong. They're made to handle, high loads on the winch launch and extreme loads on landing. So they come in and literally dive in and dork, like nose plant, lawn dart the nose into the ground. So they've got it to a point where they're like Jody Miller, who won both days contest, for instance. He can come in and has the timing down and his flight path and everything, and he'll nose it in right at the last second. And he'll often get 100 points, 99, 98, 97, really high scores. And those planes have more of an advantage because they can do that nosedive and then just literally pinpoint the spot and nail it and stick it. Where with the electric planes, they have to slide. They're more fragile. You don't want to dork the nose in so hard like that and break the motor or the gearbox or something. So you kind of got to slide it. It's a little bit less accurate of a way to land. So I think I did the best overall with an electric plane. There was quite a few guys flying electrics. I think there was more winch launchers than electrics, but it was good amount of electric launchers, and we're seeing that add pilots to competitions. because winch launching has been slowly dying because it's kind of a hassle and the lines can break and it's a pain to set up and you have to have all this equipment. And so what they're doing is adding in this mixed launch to get more electric guys to come out and kind of increase attendance. And that we did see that happen at this contest. So that was good. But I think it's a little bit, you got a better chance of doing really well if you have a TD plane with no motor in it in that style of competition. But man, I really enjoyed the F5J portion. That seems a lot more fun. Like I said, it was heart pounding. And then there's less of an emphasis on landing, although a meter is not very big. So even doing a sliding landing, it's still pretty challenging to get the full 50 points, but you could still score well just getting in the general vicinity. So Saturday night barbecue right there, they had some guys come in and cook for us. And oh my gosh, man, Jeff said, it's so good, it can't be good for you. And we had all kinds of meat and potatoes and baked beans, and he like cooked the meat in the baked beans or something. So the fat drizzled down into the baked beans. I mean, it was some seriously good food. He was like, a lot of people come literally just for the food to the contest, hanging out, enjoying the time with people and eating food. It was extremely hot all 3 days. It was mid to upper 90s. Crazy. There's a good picture. Go back to that one. So that's Jody Miller in the middle. And that's Frank, the guy that came in third. I think that's Frank. Yeah. He came in third on the F5J, came in second there. And then Scott Shaw, the guy on the blue shirt, that's the guy that got me into flying big planes. He's the guy that gave me 2 Supras that he had laying around. He said, you should come fly these. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. And so he's kind of responsible for me being into these kind of big plane contests now. So that's awesome. And send your prayers out to Scott. He fell off he rides bikes. He'll go out for 50, 100 miles riding bicycles. And he fell the other day and separated his shoulder. So I saw an x-ray and it's like completely separated. It looks crazy. So hopefully he recovers well. Here's your junior. This was sportsman class. And the guy in the middle, Charleston, he did awesome. He actually I think he came in either second or third the first day, and then I think he came in first in sportsman on the second day on Sunday. And he flies hand launch gliders too, but he was on the F3J for the juniors team, the USA juniors team, went to the Worlds last year representing the United States. So that was cool. It's good to see youth in the hobby and just continuing it. His dad flies. He beat his dad, which was awesome.
Nice.
Super fun. Okay, so here's a story. So if you look at that score sheet right there, my first score, I'm in 25th out of 40-something. I have a big fat goose egg right there. And then I did really well the rest of the round, right?
Did you oversleep or something?
No. I flew. And so here's the story. So I would have been up in the top had I not blew that round. So very first round of the day, the air's kind of light. There's not a lot of thermal activity going on. And so, where Joe Nall is, right? The main line, we're flying right on the main line. And then there's the hangar and the lake. And we look out, and I'm with my timer, Brady, and we look out and we see some birds like on the other side of the lake, and they're circling, like they're in some lift. And we're like, okay, cool. That's a good read. I'm going for that. And so I launch, get up, and I head that way, and I'm sinking and sinking and sinking and sinking, and I get across the lake, and I'm still sinking, and then I hit like a little pocket of buoyant air, but I'm not really going up, but I'm not coming down, and so I'm just chasing it. The birds are kind of still there for a minute, and they scatter, and I'm looking for lift, and now I'm way past the lake and way out over the trees, and I'm basically committed. Like there's nowhere else to go. Like I can't come back into other lift. It's still early. There's not a lot of thermals. And so I'm just like, I got to just try it, so I just kept going and kept going and kept going. And I just never found any good lift. And it came to the point was I'm going to land in the trees or I'm going to turn the motor back on and come back. And guess what I did, right? If it comes down to that choice, I'm going to save the plane every time. So I could get a 0 and be in the trees, or I can get a 0 and have my plane back, essentially is what it comes down to. And so I motored on, and as soon as you turn the motor back on, it's a 0. 0 flight, 0 landing, no points. And with no drop rounds in thermal duration flying, you just hose yourself. So I was basically didn't even have a chance in the competition after round 1. So it made it kind of fun the rest of the day, so I could, not feel too stressed out and just enjoy it and flying. But it was one of those things that with a mixed TD, when you have a motor on, you can fly a little bit more risky, knowing that you can just turn the motor back on. But
right.
But it kills you. It's like I would have rather have come back and got some points, even if it was 500 or 600 points instead of 1,000, but instead take a 0. So from then on, I told myself I don't have a motor. I'm going to fly as if I don't have a motor and can't get the plane back. So you fly a little bit more conservatively, but you just don't get out so deep over the trees with no lift. And that seemed to work, and I was able to make my times the rest of the rounds. And I think I made my time every other flight from then on, both days. But there's Jody. He's awesome. He's one of the best in the world. And that guy, there should be a picture of him landing. See if we can find that so I can show you kind of what I'm talking about. Keep going. I think it's going to be in this grouping. So there's him flying. Nope, keep going. Yeah, so close it. You'll see it. It's that one right there. Yep. So he and Noah also do this. They kind of get down and like they crunch down and they get low, and then you can see him. He's just dorking that plane in, like slamming the nose into the ground. But that's basically the 100-point mark right there where he's at. Like he's almost perfect every time. And it's really what it takes. You're going to be separated by very few points at the top when you're in a contest like this with best guys in the world. So you got to be on your A game every round.
I thought you'd be the only guy wearing a mask like that.
No, yeah, it's pretty common in the soaring world. And so one other great thing about this event is we had newbies. We had guys that had never been to a contest. They came out for it. We had a ton of kids. This was very family oriented. A lot of families came out and babies, and it was great. Kids playing around under the gazebo. And what we saw is you don't have to have one of these $3,000 composite competition planes to come out and have a good time and enjoy this. You might need that to be at the top of the group, the very best you can be. But we had guys flying Radians, a couple $100 foam airplanes and doing pretty well, and having fun and just coming out and being able to do it. We had balsa planes. You don't have to have a lot of money and time and stuff into these planes to be able to come out and compete and have a good time. Because that's really what it's about. It's, it's a competition, but it's also a weekend of hanging with your buddies. And we were doing night sorties and flying night Radians and flying through the gazebo and trying to fly under tables, and it's a really good time. I did see one Radian XL out there, Lee. Yep. But people seem to prefer in the soaring world, the original Radian kind of is the go-to foamy, airplane that's going to do really well. It flies awesome. I was sloping my night Radian off of the dam over by the lake, off the hill over there. They're just good airplanes. And so you could get a couple $100, get a Radian, and you can go to one of these contests and have a lot of fun, and learn a lot, hang with buddies, start timing for people, just have the experience. So if you're interested in it at all, there's competitions all over the place, East Coast, West Coast, everywhere. I mean, you can just go. People are friendly. They're going to teach you the ropes. They're going to work with you. You don't have to be intimidated. It doesn't have to be scary. You should just go try it, because I was a guy that I just liked to fly for fun. And I was like, I never want to compete. I mean, that doesn't seem very fun at all. It seems super stressful and whatever. But the first time I went to one, I fell in love with it, and it's more fun. I go to it not because I do well, but I go to it because it's a lot of fun. It's another way to enjoy the hobby instead of just going out by yourself and flying in your own backyard or your park or whatever. You get to fly with a bunch of other people, have some challenging tasks, and get to enjoy that. And it's something you'll want to do the rest of your life. It really is.
All right. Well, congrats on that. As you can see, you can go to RC Groups and check this out if you want to. Let's go up and see where it's at. It's in Sailplane Events, Mid-South Soaring, so go check that out. Congrats, Jason.
Thanks,
Getting
man.
ready to go to Hungary. Jason's got a GoFundMe thing to help defray the costs of flying out there.
Yeah, and then I'll be the team's putting together a fundraising campaign for the team, and so I'll do an article on that on RC Groups, and yeah, we would really appreciate it if you guys could support us in any way. It's a lot to get over there. Tickets, hotels, food, rental cars, baggage fees, boxes. It's a lot of logistics to get the whole team over there and to compete. And any support we can get from the community is just greatly appreciated.
Ooh, I'm sleeping.
Yeah,
that's not good to say on a podcast.
Lee, all right. On your Ready in Excel, I'd say follow that manual 100% on their setup. Make sure everything looks good, everything's neutral, and it's going to fly like a baby. I mean, you'll be able to hand launch it without the motor and just do a test glide on some nice soft grass. Just make sure nothing's wonky on it, and then power up and go fly. It's literally a piece of cake to fly. You're going to love it. Very good airplane.
You heard it here first, folks. Just make sure it's not wonky. Wonky. Everyone, don't go away. We're about to hit the off switch, and then we're going to turn the on switch on, and I'm going to drink a Red Bull, and we're going to shift gears into Joe Nall 2019, which was crazy. It was gigantic. I actually have some stats. Oh, I better find them real quick. But I talked to the director over there and got numbers on pilots, vendors, and everything else, and that's about to happen. Thanks, Jason. Congratulations.
Yeah,
this has been the RC Group's Hangout discussing the Mid-South Soaring Championships, F3K, and everything else. So there you go. We appreciate everybody logging in live, and we will see you on the next broadcast happening any second now.